In this video, I'll be showing you how to design this app in Figma and then code it using Flutter. We've got a lot to do, so let's get started. So here we have our reference image. I will put a link to the Dribble post in the description. Shout out to the designer. And we're going to copy this image and then we can close out of this and then paste it into our Figma file. We're only going to use the left image for our reference, so we're going to just hold down Control and drag so we just see the post that we're making. We can also go ahead and lock it, and then we'll rename it to reference image. Great. So now what we want to do is we want to use this reference image to grab out of our colors. We're actually going to use 5 colors: the white, the dark text color, our background color, and then our post color, and then we'll have our accent color. So to do that, we can hit R on our keyboard and click. We will add a border radius of this of 16 just so it's not a square, and then we're going to hit Shift A to turn it into an auto layout just so that we can copy these quicker, and then we'll select our image and then hit Control D 4 more times so that we have 5 images. We can then select the first one, click our fill and the eyedropper and grab our background color. We can do the next one to grab our background post color. The next one we're actually just going to make completely white, which is FFFFFF. And then for the next one, we're going to make it completely white, but we're going to do a 50% opacity to make it slightly darker, and it'll look better when it's overlaid a dark image since its opacity is 50%. And then for the last color, we're going to click here and grab the pink on the icon. Great. Now what we can do is we can rename these colors to what we want. We want the first one to be a background, the second one to be our post background, the third one is going to be our text light, the fourth one is going to be our text dark, and then the last one is going to be our accent. We can select all of these, and then we can actually use a plugin by hitting Control P. Make sure you install it, and then you can hit Control P. But that plugin is going to be Styler, and then we can just do Styler generate styles. And what this will do is it'll change our selection colors into actual named colors, and then we can use these and only these colors throughout our design, so we continue to use the exact same colors. Once that's done, we can select our colors and delete them out. Now what we want to do is we want to do the font as well. We could either copy the design, but we're just going to make our own. It's very close, but it's a little bit different. So we'll hit T on our keyboard and click. We're going to write out username, and then we're going to come over here. The font is going to be Roboto. The font style is going to be semi-bold, or font weight, I should say. And then the font size is going to be, we could do 16. 16 looks good. And then for the fill, we're just going to make it our text color. We're going to hit T on our keyboard again. This one is going to be our post time, which is the 2 hours ago in this scenario. And then we're going to switch this to regular, font size 14. We're actually going to make this 12. We'll make this font size 12. And then for the fill, we'll make it our dark color. There we go. And then we'll hit T on our keyboard and do one more. And this one is going to be our post text. And then we can select this. This one is going to be size 14, regular, and then the color is going to be this one. Now we could technically change these colors again later on, so it doesn't really matter what the colors are. Just make sure that we have the right text styles. Semi-bold 16 for our username, regular 12 for our post time, and regular 14 for the Roboto, for the post text. So we can select all of these and hit Control P again, do Styler, generate styles, and then this will generate our text styles, which if you click out of everything, you'll see our styles right here: post text, post time, and username. And then for the post text, go back into it, and then click it, and then here we go, click it, and then we can actually click the little adjustments right to this, and then come down to our line height, and then switch this to 150%. This will make it spaced out a little bit so that there's some spacing in between this, and then we'll change the rest later. So we can delete those, and now that we have that done, we can start working on our design. So we're gonna get started with the post title. So what we can do is we can just come over here, hit F on our keyboard to make a frame. We're going to make this frame, this is going to be our circle, so we'll make it 48 by 48. Click this little button first to make sure it's the same size. We can actually switch the fill from white, click it and switch it to an image, and then it'll get this checkered. And then we can hit Control P and use another plugin called avatars, and then this will give us a random photo of a person. And then we can switch the border radius from 0 to any big number, and we'll just do 100, and that'll make it a circle. Great. Now what we can do is we can hit T on our keyboard. This is going to be our username. Right now we'll just write Spellthorn, and then we want to make sure that the text it's using is our username text style. And then we're going to hit T on our keyboard again, and then this one we'll just write 2 hours ago to match the design. And then we want to make sure that this text style uses our post time. And then again, we can change the fill to be our darker color. Also make sure that the fill on our username is our lighter color, text light. We can drag these kind of close together, select both of them and hit Shift A. This is going to create an auto layout or a frame around them. And when designing in Figma, you can also save yourself some time and start renaming stuff to match Flutter. So in this case, we can hit Control R with it selected, and that's going to let us rename it. And then since this is a column, we can just name it column. We don't have to give it specific names. You don't actually have to do this, but it is nice to say, hey, this is a column. This will be a row, stuff like that. And then we do want to add a spacing between here, a vertical space between both of them, and we can switch that to 4. Then what we want to do is we want to select the frame of our image as well as the column we just made and hit Shift A again. This is going to make another frame around both of them. We can hit Control R with it selected and then call it a row because that's essentially what it is. And now we can come over here and change the horizontal space between them to be 16, and this will add a 16 space in between the image and our text. We also need to add the 3 little dots over here so we can use another plugin. Figma is all about plugins. Definitely install the ones that I'm using. You'll use them all the time. And we can do material design icons. And then for this one, we're going to do dots and then choose the horizontal one. Great. Now we can just kind of drag this up in place. We'll fix it in a moment, but we do want to get rid of the fill because we don't need it. And then we do want to switch the selection color to our dark text color or text dark color so that it's gray like the design. We can now select all of these, the row that we just made and the dots, and hit Shift A again and Control R and rename it row. And now what we can do is we can come over here to our auto layout, make sure it's in a aligned center. It might be if you dragged them close together, but if not, make sure it's aligned center. And then we can click the advanced auto layout sections and switch it from spacing mode packed to space between. Think of this like Flutter, main axis alignment, space between. That's essentially what we're doing. And then if we ever drag these to different sizes, it'll come with it, which is great. And then we can also go ahead and add the padding on this if we want to. Horizontal padding is 16. You can do it now or do it later just to see if you need to adjust it, but we'll be doing horizontal padding 16. And then again, just make sure it's spaced between. All right, we'll come back to this on the sizing later. We can actually switch it from fixed width to hug for right now, and then we'll come back later and switch it to space between, which will switch it back to fixed. So that's completely fine. Great. Now that we have the heading done, if we look at that, we have it done, super simple. And now we can work on our text. So to do our text, we're going to hit T on our keyboard. We can just space this out with regular text at the moment. This is some text that will take up 2 lines. Now you can do it like this. You can also just add some dummy text. You can hit Control P and use a, we'll select the text, Control P, and then use another one called Content Reel. Content Reel allows us to randomly choose names and stuff like that, but you can also use it to randomly choose text by going to the text, and then you can either get lorem ipsum if you want that right here. There's long, there's short. There should be a lot of other ones in here that might let you have actual paragraphs in case you don't want to use the lorem ipsum. You could also use right here, paragraphs, right? And then this will let you select a paragraph or two. Maybe there's some short ones, long ones, which is pretty cool. You can just click it and use that. In this scenario, right here, some lorem ipsum for 20 words. These are kind of long. What we could do then is we could actually use ChatGPT, which is really awesome. So if we switch to ChatGPT, I need a social media post about dancing. I am finally being a great dancer. So excited. Cool. So we can just ask ChatGPT to write us some text if we really want to. And that's what I love about using AI in our designs. We can grab all of this, which is actually going to help us on our next step. So we need some hashtags. So copy that. And then we'll go back to our design, and then we can just paste that in and tweak it later. Again, make sure that the fill is going to be our text dark. And then we want to, again, put everything in a auto layout, so Shift A. And then we can switch this to have padding on the horizontal padding. We'll come back to that. We'll just make this 0 because we're going to have two texts in here. And we can text style the whole thing rather than the individual. And then what we want to do is we want to change this to fixed width just because it's long text right now. And then we can go into our text and then switch it to fill container. And what that does is say, hey, I will take up as much space as I can horizontally, but you need to make sure that the auto layout is a certain size, and then we can switch it back to hug contents. We'll come back to this later as to why you'll use hug contents, but it's simply put, it'll let you, when you drag it out, if it's hug, it'll actually fit to the size as long as this is on fill. So as you can see here, it changes when you resize it then. So, but we can do hug for right now, and we'll fix this later at the very end when we finish our post layout. And then just click here and then fill. Cool. There we go. And then we don't need all of this text. We want to take out our, well, first we want to switch this from username to post text. And then we want to grab out our hashtags because they are not going to be here. We're going to make another text layout. So hit T on our keyboard, and then we're going to post in our hashtags. We could add a comma between if we want to match the design. Again, make sure it's on post text, but then this color was going to be our accent color. And then we don't want these separate. We can actually put these both together in the same frame, which is this one. And then make sure that it's vertical rather than horizontal. And then we'll rename this Control R and call it a column. So we made two texts, this one and this one. And then we put it in a column is essentially what we did. And then we can post text, and then we can rename this to post hashtags if you want to rename it. Cool. And then make sure that the column fits both of it, and then click the text here and switch it to fill container, and then the text here to fill container. It always switches, so we'll fix it before we finalize, but there we go. And now we can drag our outside column and resize it for it to resize internally. Great. Now what we need to do is we need to do our image. So we can hit F on our keyboard for a frame. Always use frames. Don't use rectangles, circles. It's better to use frames. It gives you more adjustments over stuff. We're going to switch the fill just like we did with the icon. We're going to switch it from a solid to an image. And then we want this image to be 320, but we want it to be 16 by 9. So the easiest way to make it 16 by 9, divide the 320 by 16 and we get 20. And then for the height, we're going to make it 20 times 9, and that's 180. So that's an easy way to figure out what would be a 16 by 9. Divide the width you want by 16, multiply that amount by the height of 9. Cool. And then we can hit Control P on this, and then go, instead of avatars, we want to use free pick. And then this is another website that allows you to randomly choose images. Since we talked about dance, we can actually use this image because I think it looks awesome. And there we go with that. And then we can rename this if we want to, just to post image. And then we'll fix up the spacing in a moment. And then lastly, what we need to do is add in the, if we go back to our design, we need to add in the icons here and the text. So we can do that by hitting Control P, go to Material Design Icons. We're going to grab out our favorite, which is this one, and then we're going to grab out our comment, and we're going to use this one. I like this one. Oh, where did they go? All right, let's try that again. I spelled comment with too many M's, that's why. So we're going to grab this one and then make sure it's not selected and then do favorite, otherwise it replaces your selection. And then there we go. So we have favorite and then we have our comment. We can select both of them, close out of here, and then change the selection color to our accent color. Actually, this one is going to just be our text color. And then also just get rid of the fill because we don't need anything that's not in there. Great. Now what we're going to do is hit T on our keyboard to do our text, aka our numbers. We'll do 150. We're going to switch the color to our text light. Make sure it's post text. Just drag it up kind of in the middle of the heart. Select both of them, the heart, and also make sure you select like the outer frame of the heart as well. If you can see that, it kind of doesn't grab it here and then it grabs it here. So grab both of them, Shift A for a frame, Control R to make it a row, just so you know it's a row. And then the spacing is going to be 4. There we go. And we can hit T on our keyboard and do the same for the comments. This is going to be 50. Select it, drag them both, make sure that we're selecting the frame of the container and not just the icon. And then Shift A, Control R, row. There we go. And then make sure this is 4 as well. Also make the alignment is center. If you center them before you do the adjustments, it normally makes it center. But if it's like this and not center, stuff like that, make sure it's centered. And then we can select both of these, all of them, and then hit Shift A, Control R, name it row again. And now we have a row, and then we can also space out the difference between both of them, both of the rows, which is going to be 16. And then we can just drag that up into where we want it. We'll fix it in a moment. Actually, we do want to fix it. Yeah, we'll fix it in a moment. Cool. So now we have all of our components done in our design. Now we can go through, select all of them like so, and then hit Shift A again. And then this one, we can call it a column, but since this is our actual post, we'll just call it post. So now what we want to do is we want to style the post itself, and then we also want to go through and make sure everything stretches to how it's supposed to. So for the style, we want a padding between each section of 8. We also want a background color or a fill of our post background. We also want to come down to effects, and we want to add a drop shadow by clicking the little sun right here. We're going to switch the blur to 16, and we're going to switch the X and the Y to 0, and then you can keep it black at 25%. And then what we want to do is we want to make sure that there's a padding on the individual stuff, not the actual post itself. So we're going to click the first one, which is our row of our post title, and we're going to switch that to fill container. That should stretch the whole way across. And since we already gave it the padding of 16, it should have the padding of 16. With our text or our column of text, we want to do the same thing. We want to come over here and switch it to fill container. It should now fill the entire container, but we also want to make sure that this also has a padding of 16. And then we also want to make sure that the padding between our hashtags and our text is 8. I didn't mention it earlier, but when designing, you should always work on an 8 grid. Everything should be divisible by 8 or 4. So make sure every number can be divided by 8 essentially. And then we also want to do the image. Just make sure that the image fills the container. That way it stretches the whole way across. You could keep it fixed just for the design, but we do want to make sure that it stretches the whole way across. And then for the bottom row, this is not the individual rows inside. We're already done with those, but we want to make sure that this fills the container. And then we want it to be right aligned, not left aligned. So we can come over here and do it that way. And this is the same as doing main axis alignment end, right? So there, now we have our post. It is kind of big because of all the text. We could make it smaller, but that's fine. But if you did it right, now you should be able to do this with your design. Also make sure that the padding on the bottom row is 16 as well. There we go. And then we want to add a post padding because it's too close to the top and bottom. We want to add just vertical padding on the actual post itself. And that vertical padding can be 16. And there we go. We now have our post. We also want to round our corners of 16. And there we go. But we're not done yet. We want to make sure that this looks good in a design. So what we can do is we can click our post and we can turn this into a component. That way we don't edit it anymore. Well, we can edit it if we want to, but we won't have to keep just copy pasting them. We can turn it into a component. And now what we can do is we can finish our design. So we'll come up here and we'll hit frame, and then we can actually hit frame, and then we can choose Android large, and then we want to hit Shift A because we want to make this an auto layout. We can rename it to phone. We want to make sure that this has a background color or fill of our background, and then we also want to give this padding, so we can do a padding of 16 and a padding of 16 top and bottom. And then in between our like posts, we want a padding of 16 as well. Now we can go over to our assets and we can drag them over. And then we can also hit Control D, and now we get another one. Now it does change our design a little bit. So what we want to do is just change it back to the 360, and then we can change this one to 800 like it was. It's the only downside to using a frame. And then with that, once we drag our component into another frame, we have to make sure that we select it and switch it from fixed to fill, so it fills that container as well. And then we can make sure that the height is hug. So in case that changes, fill to fill horizontally, hug to hug vertically. And then there we have our phone. We can also add a padding around this of 24, so it looks good, and that's our design. We're not done yet though. We do want our design look a little unique. So what we could do is we can click this image, hit Control P, and just do avatars. There we go. And there's another guy here. We can switch out these names. Here's a name, so we can use Control P, content reel, go to full name, choose a female's name. We have Jenny Wilson, great. And then for the other one, this one is a guy, so we can go back to content reel, full name. We will do Guy Hawkins, great. We could change his post, but maybe he just copied her post, right? Or else I guess she copied his, but we can go in here, click the image. I'm clicking stuff inside the design by just hitting Control and clicking, and then we can do free pick, and then we'll just grab a different design here. Let's do fitness. And then this guy looks like he'd work out at the gym. There we go. So maybe he's at the gym and he's helping. Maybe he's her fitness trainer. And there we go. So that's pretty much our design. Now all we have to do is we need to go ahead and take this design and code it using Flutter. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now to get started with Flutter, we're going to create our project. We can hit the Windows key and then type command. And then we'll CD to our desktop. We'll Flutter create a social post. Well, this will create our project for us. And then we will CD into social post. And then we will code dot to open it up into VS Code. And then we can go ahead and jump into our main.dart file. And we can select here, copy and delete everything out. There we go. And then we will do a stateless widget. And then this stateless widget will be called my app. There we go. And we're going to return a material app. And then this material app is going to have the debug banner as false, and then home as homepage. Perfect. Then we're going to go to our lib folder. We can make a new folder, call this pages. And then inside that folder, we can make a new file called home_page.dart. And then we're going to import our material. We're then going to make another stateless widget, and this is going to be called homepage. Save it, and then import our save. And then we can launch our Pixel 6 Pro Once that's launched, we can then go ahead and hit F5 and then run that on our Pixel 6 Pro. And we'll wait for that to load up. All right, so it's all loaded. We now have our emulator showing the placeholder, so now we can begin. What we're gonna do is we do wanna go back to our Figma file because we haven't done everything that we need to get started with Flutter. What we want to do is we can grab out our text styles and our color styles, and the easiest way to do that is having another plugin. We can hit Control P, and this one is called Figma Styles Converter for Flutter. I was messing with some other ones, but this one's the best one. There are some plugins that'll do the code for you, but it's not perfect. So, but we can go ahead and click Analyze, and then this will allow us to copy all of our fonts, our text styles, and our colors without actually having to do it ourselves, which is great. So we can go into our lib folder, make a new folder called utils, and then inside that folder, we'll make a file called styles.dart. And then we'll import our styles. Simply put, it creates a getter called Figma colors, and then we have our accent, text dark, text light, post background, and our background. And then we also have the Figma text styles. We have our post text, our post time, and our username. So we can grab these without having to write this, which is really great. So we'll be using those in a moment. So with our home page, if we look at our design, essentially we're going to be making a list view, which is our design itself, since it's just going to be a list of posts in this video. But then we also have the, thank you, by the way, for 500 subscribers. I really appreciate that. But we also have the just the list view right now. So let's go ahead and start with that. We're going to return our scaffold, and the background color of our scaffold is going to be the Figma colors and then background. We can hit save. There we go. We already have a nice background. For the body, we don't need an app bar in this design, so we're just going to do a body. But because we don't have an app bar, we do need a safe area. And then inside of the safe area's child, it's going to be a list view. Later on, we'll make this a list view separator, but right now we'll just make it a list view so we can add stuff in, and then we're going to add in our children. So because our children are going to be a lot of different posts, what we want to do is we want to create our post first. So to do that, we're going to make a new folder under our lib. We will call this components, and then we'll make a new file, and we'll call this we'll just call this post.dart. We don't have to make it too complicated. We're going to import our material, do stateless widget, and then this stateless widget is going to be just called post. And then to make sure that it's working, we can call post. And then there we go. And we'll come back to this later so we don't see the squiggles. So inside of our post, we're going to add, if we look at our post, we're going to have a lot of different content. We're not going to worry about this right now. It's just going to be visual, but we could add a something here to grab these as well if we need to. But we at least need a profile image, profile name, post time, post text, post hashtags, post image, and then we can do favorite count and comment count. So we need to do that. So to do that, we're going to make a new folder under our lib. We're going to call this models just to kind of make it all nice and neat. And inside that, we'll do a new file, and this we'll call postmodel.dart. There we go. And then we can return a class, and that class is going to be called, we can't really call it post because we already did post. So we'll just call this post model just because we did a bad naming. So we want to this will be a string, which will be the image URL. And then we also have a final string, and this will be name. We also have a final string, and this will be our post time. And then we have a final string, and this will be our post text, final string, post tags, and then final string, post image. And then we have final int, and this int is going to be called favorite count. And then final int comment count. There we go. So we have the image URL, the name, the post time, post text, the post tags, post image, the favorite count, and the comment count. And then we're getting an error, so we can create a constructor, and that'll make that error go away. And it does it for us, which is great. Essentially, it just goes this dot that, this dot that, this dot that. Great. So now we have our post model. We can come back to that in a moment. And then let's go ahead and start designing out our post. So to do that, we're going to return a column, and this is where we could go back to our Figma design if we need help, because we named them commas and rows, and that's really what it is: columns and rows. So we could go back to our Figma file if need be, but we can just look at our image. Our post is essentially a column, which is this. Inside that, we're going to have a row. We're going to have a column. We're going to have an image, and then a row and rows, and just like how we designed it. So let's go ahead and do that. So for our first column, we can actually, instead of doing that, we can design it first. So our column is going to actually be a container. So we're going to add a container to it so that we can style what the post looks like. And then inside the post is going to be a column. So we can give it a decoration. It's going to be a box decoration because we want it to look like a box with rounded corners. We can give it a color. That color is going to be our Figma colors post background. The border radius is going to be border radius dot circular 16. And if we hit save, we don't see anything because we need a width and a height. So we can start adding content so we can start seeing that. So our first child under the column is going to be a row. Inside that row, we're going to have some children. The first child is going to be a container, which is our image. And this is going to have a width of 48. It's going to have a height of 48. It's going to have a decoration of a box decoration. We want the box decoration to be a image. We want the image to be a decoration image. We want the image of the decoration image to be a network image because we're getting it off of the internet. And I've gone ahead and went to this website right here, which is the same website that kind of gives you the avatars when we use the plugin avatars, and it just gives you a list of random people, and then we can just choose a random person that kind of looks like our dancer. Here's one because she had curly hair, and then we can post that URL in. Oops. Let's try that again. Post that URL in, and then we can clean up our commas and hit save. And then now we see our image. Now we want this to be a circle. So under the box decoration, we can do shape and then box shape.circle. We don't have to do 100% border radius if it's going to be a circle, which is good. And then we get the squiggles so we can make that a const. Now that we have our image inside of our row, what we want to do next is, if we look at our design, we have a column right here of these two texts. So we can do that. After the container, we're going to have a column. Our column is going to have some children. The first child is going to be our text. Now we want our text to actually be a Google font because it's Roboto. So what we can do before we get started is we can install our Google fonts by hitting Control tilde and then do flutter pub add Google _ fonts. And then this will allow us to use our Google fonts, which is great. And then we could also add variables for this like we did our Figma colors, but we don't use it too much, so we don't have to do that often, but we will be rewriting Google fonts a lot. So we'll do for our text, we're going to do the design, which was Jenny Wilson. And then for the style, we want to do our Google fonts. So we can do Google fonts, and then it doesn't let us install it right away, so we can click it and then import our library. And now we can rewrite it, Google fonts dot Roboto, because that's the font we're using. And now what we can do is we can give Roboto inside of it some parameters. And one of the parameters is our text style. So we can actually call our text style that we made for it here. So Figma text styles, and then the dot, and then we want to give it our username. Sorry, the thing keeps popping up in the way. There we go. So essentially we're doing our text style. The text style is going to be const Figma text styles with the parentheses, and then dot username, because we're going to use the username one. But this also allows us to, we're going to have to reload. Oh no, yep. Yeah, make sure you reload when you do it like this. I don't know why it breaks it. All right, for some reason when you do that, it just breaks it, and I'm not sure. So just reload. But it isn't the color that we want. And the cool thing is we can actually pass the color through the Google Fonts Roboto just by calling color, and then we can use our Figma colors, and then that color is going to be Figma colors dot our text light. So now we can give it a different text style with the Google fonts, as well as a different color, which is really cool. So you can use the same text styles with different colors without having to make more variables, which is great. And then for that, well, that looks good. And then we're going to add below this text, we're going to add another text. And then this text is going to be our 2 hours ago. And again, we're going to do the same thing. It's going to be a style. It's going to be Google Fonts.roboto. And then we're going to pass this text style, which is going to be const Figma text styles dot, and then this one is going to be our post time. There we go. And then for the color, oops, make sure you're inside the Google font. For the color, we're going to do Figma colors dot text dark. And now we have our text light and our text dark. Now we do want a space between these, like our design. And this is what's so great about Figma. If you're not sure how much spacing, just go back to the design. But it is a sized box of 4, a height of 4. There we go. Delete and comma. Great. And now these aren't together like we want them to be. So what we can do is we can come up to our column and do cross-axis alignment, cross-axis alignment dot start. I always have trouble saying that. But what I'll do is I'll make sure that everything in the column starts on the left, or at the start, which is the left. Great. Now we do want to add a space in between our container and our column. Again, back to the design, we know that this is 16, so we can do a sized box with a width of 16 and then save it that way. There we go. So we now have that section of the row done, but inside of this row, we actually are going to have another there's 3 little dots. So in this row, we have our image, we have our column of the names, but we want these grouped together. If we could look at our image, we want these grouped together and this one separate. So what we need to do is, since these are wrapped in a row, we need to wrap our row in another row. And then we can add, after this row, we can add our icon. And then the icon is going to be our 3 little dots. Now in our Figma file, we actually used material design icons. So what we can do is we can install them like we did Google Fonts. So control tilde, and it's Flutter pub add material underscore design underscore fonts underscore Flutter question mark. I think that's right. Oh, why did I write fonts? It's Flutter pub add material underscore icons, material underscore design underscore icons underscore Flutter. I don't know why I wrote fonts. It's been a long day. It's been a long day. But yeah, it's icons, not fonts. I'm so sorry. Cool. And now what we can do for our icon is we can return an icon, but it's going to be our material design icon, MDI icons. And then we can just reference the ones from the image itself. And so this one, MDI icons dot, and then it was dots. Why is that not MDI icons? It's there until I hit the dot, and then it doesn't want to be. Dot, then it messes up. Oh, it's because we have to import it. Always make sure you import your libraries if you're getting weird errors like that. There we go. Sometimes it auto imports and sometimes it doesn't. So dot, and then this is going to be dots horizontal for the 3 little dots. There we go. And then we want to make sure that we give this a color. This is going to be our Figma color text dark. Great. And then we want to make sure it's already centered aligned, which is great. If it wasn't, we could do that. But that's kind of what a column does. And then what we can do, or a row does, what we can do is we can const this. What we can do now is we can go up to the main row and then do main axis alignment space between. Just like we did in our Figma file, we can do that here. And then we do want to add some padding to this title. So we can click here, add the wrap with padding, and we want some symmetrical padding on the horizontal, and we want that to be 16 to match our design. And there we go. We now have the title done. We'll clean up the rest later. Yes, good. So now what we can do is we can minimize this just so it's less confusing. And now that is step 1 of our we'll actually comment here, post title. Just there's going to be a lot in this post, so we can do it that way. So now that we have the padding done, what we want to do is we want to move on to the text. And the text here is essentially just a column. We have a column with 2 texts, our main text, and then our hashtags. So we can do that. So that is actually the quite simple. That's a column. That column is going to have 2 children. Inside that children, we're going to return a text. The text that we're going to grab is, all right, we've grabbed the text from our design. We're going to hit Alt-Z to make sure that it is, also with text, because we have parentheses, because we have dashes in, we have to make sure we have 2 dashes. Otherwise, the IVE is going to break our design or break our code. Cool. In case you should know that, but in case you didn't, make sure it's a double quotation marks and not just that one. All right, cool. So then we have our text. Now it's not what we want it to look like. So of course we can style this. We can do that inside of it. And then it's going to have a style. This style is also going to be Google Fonts dots Roboto. And then this is going to be our text style. That text style is going to be our Figma text styles dot post text. And then we're going to have a color. And then this color is going to be our Figma colors. And then it's going to be our text dark. There we go. And then add a const for the Figma text. There we go. There's our text style. And then we can go ahead and add our other text. This is going to be our hashtags. So let me copy those. So here's our hashtags. And again, we're going to give this a style. It's going to be our Google Fonts Roboto. And then this is going to have a text style. We should stop popping up those blocks. And then this text style is going to be our Figma text styles dot post text. And then for the color, this color is going to be our accent color. So Figma colors dot accent, because we want it to be that pink. Now, again, make sure we add the const to get rid of the squiggle. Now with our column, again, it centers everything. We don't want it to be centered. So what we can do is we can do cross-axis alignment. I'm never going to get that right. And then cross-axis alignment dot start to make sure that it's on the left. And then we did add just a little bit of spacing between the two. So we can do const sized box with a height of 8. 8 actually might be too big, but that's what we did in our design. It's not too bad. And then we want to make sure that we add the padding on the column itself, not the individual texts. And then we can do a padding. And then this is going to be symmetric. And then this is going to be horizontal 16. Perfect. And then just so we don't forget, because we are in a column, We want to add a comment here that says post text, but then we also want to add our const sized box with a height of 8, because there's an 8 gap between our image and our text. Cool. And then an 8 gap between our hashtags and our text. All right, now we can move on to the image. Image is very easy to do as well. So we're going to comment this, post image, and then we're going to just do it now so we don't forget. Size box, height 8. Perfect. And then we're going to add in our image. Now for our image, this can actually just be a container. So we'll do a container, and then the container is going to have, let's just do the decoration. So we'll do a decoration, box decoration. This is going to have a image. The image is going to be a decoration image. The image of it is going to be a network image because we're getting it on the internet. And then we're going to copy that image over from FreePic. Shout out to FreePic. That's the same one in our design. And then we're going to clean up our commas and then save. Now with this, it doesn't show up, and there's a reason why it doesn't show up, and it's because we haven't given it a width or a height for the image. I believe we can mess with this by giving it, not there, by giving it a child of a container. No, we want to do a child of an aspect ratio because we want it to be a certain aspect ratio, and that aspect ratio is going to be 16 by 9. And what that'll do is it'll say, hey, I need to make sure that this image stays in a 16 by 9 ratio. I don't care what size it is. It can change whatever size it wants. It just needs to make sure that it's an aspect ratio of 16 by 9, which is how we did our design. Under our image, we want to give it our fit, and then the fit is going to be box fit cover. And what that's going to do is say, hey, stretch the entire width of the container, and we didn't give it anything, so it's going to stretch the entire way. So our container is done for our image, our post image. We are almost done with our design. What we want to do then is we just need to add our post stats, which is going to be at the bottom. So our post stats is going to be a row. Inside that row, we're going to have 2 children. The first child is going to be, we'll do it inward and then outward. So the first child of our row is going to be our icon. This icon is going to be the icons.favorites, MDI icons.favorites. Nope, I think it's just called heart. There we go, heart. Perfect. And then for this, the color is going to be our Figma colors accent. Great. And then we want to add a text widget next to it. This is going to be 150. And then the style is going to be, not that. I'm trying to get rid of that box. Google fonts.roboto. And this is what I love about once you start designing, like it just keeps going. You just keep repeating yourself essentially. So Roboto, and then that is going to be a text style. The text style is going to be, you already know, our Figma text styles. And this is why I always say, if you're not good at learning, or I guess not good at learning code, but if you're not good at coding, just code. Because once you get something done, especially use ChatGPT if you don't know something. I can't stress that enough. It's so helpful. It's, taught me aspect ratio. I still messed it up and I didn't remember it because I forgot the box fit, but it did that. And then the color is going to be our text light, and then we'll just do const. Perfect. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but it doesn't look like that's completely centered. I think that's just me, but I can't get it to actually center anymore, so we're just going to leave it like that. But we'll do a height, not a height. We're going to do a width in between the two of 4. So we have our text of 150, text style post text, color text light, and then we have a width of 4, and then we're going to add a const to our icon. Great. Now that we have that row, we can actually copy this row just to save some time, and then we're going to add another row below it. And then this row is going to be 50. And then instead of text light, no, we'll keep it as text light. Instead of Figma colors accent on our heart, we're going to make this text light. And then instead of the heart, we're going to do comment. And then we're going to hit save. And they're not exactly how we want them, but we do have them done. So we're going to select both of them and then hit Control X. And then we're going to make another row, children, and then paste those in. So we made them just like our design. We made each of them a row, an icon and a text in a row, icon, text in a row. And then we've gone ahead and thrown them both into a row. And then because we've done it that way, we want to add some spacing, const sized box width, not women, width of 16. And then there we go. And then because we want to make sure that this can be spaced a line on the right, we want to make sure that we add a main axis alignment on our main row that has the two rows inside. And then we can space them to the end. So we're just saying, hey, I don't want you on the left. I want you the whole way on the right. And go ahead and get over there. And then we can click the little light bulb and then add a padding. And then this padding is going to be symmetric with a padding of 16. And then it's going to be horizontal. So it's just going to do left and right, horizontal 16 padding. There we go. Now we do need to add some padding between our post stats and our image. So size box height 8. Just like the rest of our design. And there we go. And now that should look exactly like we first did before we thrown it into the column. We do want to go the whole way up to the top column, and we want to add a padding on this of our vertical padding. So we can do edge insets. We want to do a symmetric, and then we'll do a vertical padding of 16. That looks good, adding some space. And now what we want to do is we want to add a border radius, not a border radius, but a box shadow around our post like we did in the design. Now the only issue with this is box shadows on the emulator look terrible. So it looks better on the phone, but it's going to look really bad. So we're going to do a box shadow. That box shadow is going to take a list of box shadows. All we really need to do is add a color. That color is going to be color.from RGBO. Our red is going to be 0, our green is 0, our blue is 0, and then we're going to do 25%. And then we need to add a blur radius, and that blur radius is going to be 16 to match our design. And then we'll add a const to get rid of the squiggles. So again, looks terrible, but it'll look really good on the design. It's just the emulator makes it look just completely solid, which is very sad. And then with our list view, because this doesn't look perfect, we can go back to our list view at the moment, and then we can go ahead and add a padding on our list view. And then we just want an all of 16. That's going to space the sides, the top by 16. Again, please don't judge me on this border box shadow. It looks terrible, but I promise it looks much better on the device itself. But I think that's it with this. Yeah, this looks good. We're all set this. Now all we need to do is make our list view actually a list view separator. So to do that, we need to tweak some of our code around. So first what we need to do is we need to create a list of posts. So we can do this by making a list. It's going to take our post model as the type of list. And then we're going to just call this posts. And then we can do it like that. Great. Now what we want to do is we want to add in some posts. We'll just do 2 for the design, but we can do more than that. Again, you would create a database, add it. We'll be doing databases in the near future. I do want to start you doing that. So make sure if you haven't already, click that subscribe button so we can learn how to do that. There's a great way to do it with Google Sheets, which is awesome. So, and then we can get into real APIs with Google Sheets. So I think that's the best way to, at least for small projects, to go. But we can always expand that later down the road. So we are going to return a post model. Now we have to give it all of this information. So for the image URL, I should have actually renamed that to something different, but we need to copy that image URL of our person, which is right here. Great. The name for our person is going to be Jenny Wilson. The post time was just 2 hours ago. We could actually make this where it's dynamic, but this will work for now. Our post text, we're going to just grab, can't select it there, silly me. We're gonna grab our post text like so. Post the text, make sure it's double quotes. There we go, Alt-Z. Our post tags, we can copy those. They're right here. Great. Our post image URL, that's probably a bad name too. We should have wrote URL, but that's okay. That is this one. Our favorite count is 150 because it's a double, and then our comment count is 50. Great. And then we can just copy this. We don't need, you understand how this would work. Change all the information, make it look different. So that's fine. We'll just do 2. Now what we want to do is we want to make sure that our list view is a list view separator, and the separated list view separated, and the list view separated is really cool because we are allowed to add what do we want to separate it with. Now in this scenario, we're just going to separate it with a sized box, but we can make it where it's separated with whatever you want, right? Maybe you want it to be an ad or something like that, which is really cool, and that's where the separator builder comes from. So we're going to click the separator builder, click the little light bulb, and then we'll actually just create a method of our separator builder. Since we don't really need to access anything in here dynamically, we can just return a sized box, and the size box is going to have a height of 16 because that's the distance between post 1 and post 2. Now what we need to do is an item count. Well, we already know what this is. It's post.length, the length of our posts. And now what we can do is we can do our item builder. Our item builder is going to be context, comma, index is the 2 parameters you have to pass, and then we can open it up, and then we're going to return. But in order to return, first what we want to do is we want to just make it easier to get the posts. So what we can do is we can do var post equal posts index, and what this does is, hey, hopefully you know this by now, but if not, what it does is it's going to go through each time however many length there are, however many posts there are, and it's going to say posts is equal to posts 0, posts 1, all of this, and it makes it just easier. Rather than having to write this every time, we can just do post. But we need to go back to our post and grab that data that we're going to try to pass through it, which if you're not familiar with what we're going to pass through, it's right here. We just filled all of that out, but we've rewritten it, so we might not know what the names are. So what we can do is we can do a post model, and we can kind of copy these words over. So to do that, we are going to come back to our post, and then we're going to add those in. So final string, I believe we can just copy these. Copy, perfect. And then on our post, we click the little light bulb and hit final field, and it does all the hard work for us, which is great. And now we just want to use that in our post. So for the network image, we're going to have, this is the profile image. We called it image URL, which is a terrible name, but I did, and then delete our const. For the name, we're just going to call it name. Great. For our 2 hours ago, I think I called this post time. Great. And then for our post itself, this makes it nicer. We can just post text. And then for our hashtags, we can put post tag, not capital, post tags. Nope, not text, tags. There we go. And then for our image, we called this not something post image. Okay, we did call this one really good. That makes sense. Get rid of the const so it doesn't throw problems. And then we have our favorite count. Get rid of the, oh, it's an int. So we have to wrap this in text just because it's a text. So you could either do favorite count dot to string if you wanted to. But what I like to do is do the quotation marks, do a $, and then your variable favorite count. There we go. So quotation marks, $, favorite count. That lets you use a variable inside of strings. And then we'll do the same here. $, comment count. Great. That should be everything. Make sure there's nothing else that's not dynamic. Great, great, great. Now we can go back, save that. We can go back to our post page, and now we can actually return, and we can return our post. And now it's going to want all of this information. Well, we already know what this information is now. It's post.imageURL, post.name, and then we can just copy post dot and paste, 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 paste. There's probably a quicker way to do this. I'm still not the best at Visual Studio Code shortcuts. And there we go. So we have the image URL, post image URL, name, post time, post time. So you get the idea, and that's why I make sure they're always named the same way. So it just is that simple. And then we hit save all, add a const to our sized box, and we're already done technically, but here you go. And again, it looks terrible. It looks bad on this. I also messed up the border radius on the sides. That is because of me. So instead of having the padding on the list view, we can remove that. Remove this widget. We don't want the padding on the list view if we want those box shadows to show up. We actually have to add the padding on the post itself. We do that by hitting container, padding, all 16. There we go. And that'll make it so that the box shadow shows on the outside, and then you don't have a padding on the list view. So I apologize, I forgot about that. Anytime you use box shadows, you have to put the padding on the container so that it's not, so it has room for those box shadows, essentially. But there you go. We now have our design that we just made. They do look identical. We could change them, and that's the beauty of it. You could go ahead and change this information. If we go back to our design, we had Guy Hawkins. All right, there we go. And we got Guy Hawkins, and he's doing the same post as someone else. But yeah, there we go. Again, shout out to Free Pick. They add the little border on there, but that's it. I mean, we did it. And again, it does look better with the box shadow, I promise. I wish it would show good on the emulator. Let me know in the comments below if you know how to make this show better, but I was looking it up, and it's just the emulators make it look terrible. But there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you learned a lot using Figma and Flutter. And if you did, definitely check out the video on the screen right now to learn even more. And I'll see you in the next one.